So today I wanted to talk a little bit about our default mechanisms in our brain. So we all have kind of like a default pattern when it comes to our thoughts and our mood. And this is built upon over time. A lot of this comes from what we have seen and what we have mimicked from our childhood, from what we have learned. So if we've been brought up around people that constantly put themselves down or put us down or make fun of ourselves or make fun of others, or contrary to that, if you've been brought up around somebody who is always complimenting themselves and complimenting others, these become our default mechanisms. Whether we notice it or not, these become our ingrained habits. And most of these things are set in place by the age of 7. It's pretty wild to think about. So I want you to take a moment to really look at your own default mechanisms. Because when I took the time to look at mine, I noticed that I was always looking for the things that were wrong and pointing them out. And I gotta say, it was probably really annoying to the people around me, because I'm always like, oh, that's not right. And then you try to correct it. And you're like, nope, that's actually wrong. And then you'd say what's right. It doesn't matter if you're right. A lot of people, they don't want to hear that. But it was a default mechanism to always correct. To always say the right thing. To always, oh, this is actually that. It's like, there's probably a lot of times where I was just regurgitating information. It probably wasn't right. It's just regurgitated things that I had heard before. And that's the other thing. Most of the time, people are speaking, they're just regurgitating information that they were taught. Everything we say or do seems to be running as a program. We get programmed over and over by the things we watch, the people we hang out with, the things we listen to. So how can we reprogram ourselves to become better, wiser, more intuitive, kinder, happier, in harmony with nature? How can these become our default mechanisms rather than having the default mechanism of, well, that's not going to work, or nah, doesn't matter if you try or not, everything fails anyway, or I never win anything. Like these kind of default programmings of like, it never works, so why even try? Or I always expect the worst because then I'm not disappointed. That's the worst. That's the worst. When I hear people say that, it's like, well, I never expect anything good to happen. That way I'm never disappointed. It's like, congratulations. Now you're living in a perpetual state of disappointment. What's happening is that it's not that you're disappointed. It's that you're always disappointed. And now you're just not changing your baseline. You're just staying at that steady thing because you're worried if you set your goal too high, then you're going to be like, ooh, I'm excited. And then if it doesn't happen, you're like, no, I'm extra mad. It's like, nah, we gotta set our sights higher. We've gotta set our expectations better. We've gotta set our expectations for ourselves better. To be kinder, to be happier, to be wiser, to be more intuitive, to discern more. Like, I don't want to say, no, it's true. Most of society today has been brainwashed by a lot of the repetitive news that is broadcast over and over and over. And it is designed to keep you in fear and upset and talking about it over and over. So you don't just watch it, but then you take what you hear and you regurgitate it 3 or 4 or 5 times to your friends and neighbors and family. That way it really gets ingrained to your mind because you're watching it, then you're saying it, then you're listening to someone else say it, then you say it again, then they say it, and then you say it, and then they say it, and then you say it. And next thing you know, it's part of your hardwired programming to be always talking about the most current events that are sad, scary, traumatic, car wrecks, murders, robberies, awful things that have been happening. Just all these things become your default programming to talk about, to think about, and to share with others. Have you noticed that? I remember when I was in grade 6 and we had an assignment our assignment was to go home and read the newspaper and then report back the next day on report back on one of the news stories. And I remember this very vividly because I didn't get a good grade. I was not approved because I went home and I picked a news story that I liked and I reported all about it, and I brought it in, brought in the news clipping, put it on my report, handed it in, and it was, no, this isn't right. That's not what you were supposed to report on. I was like, what? Like, you said we're supposed to just, that I did exactly what you said. So, they wanted us to report back on the O.J. Simpson trial that was being broadcast all over the news and all over the newspapers. That is literally what they were trying to point us to, so that all eyes were on that. That was our school assignment. That was it, to report on that specific thing. They didn't say it had to be that, but that's what they're implying. Basically, everybody that turned in a report on that story got an A. I did not. I thought that was kind of bogus. I'm like, what? Who cares? Who cares about some trial? Like, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal was, it was so that everybody was watching that, so that they weren't watching the national apology from the president at the time, Clinton, so that nobody was watching the broadcast of him apologizing for the MK Ultra thing that the CIA did. The experimenting, the horrific experimenting and torture that took place over many decades of young children, people that were abducted and tortured and brought back home over and over and over. They were subject to all kinds of experiments, and this was all brought to light, and the people came and told their stories during this trial, and it was horrendous, the stuff that they said happened. But that's what happened, and so he did a national apology that was broadcast, but they didn't want anybody to look at that, so they made sure that the O.J. Simpson trial was, I think that was like the first trial that was ever programmed, part of TV programming, for that reason, as a big distraction. Like, they made a huge big deal out of it. Like, everybody's gonna watch this murder trial. It's crazy, it's crazy. And then the back and forth of this, what's gonna be this, what's gonna be that. This is programming. This is distraction. This is what the news is. This is how our news works. And again, it puts everybody into the same mental state, the same vibe, the same frequency of what's going to happen. Oh, what's going to happen? Everybody's on edge. Everybody's talking about the same thing. Everybody's thinking about the same thing. So I challenge you to break away from these norms when it comes to your baseline, when it comes to the way you're thinking and feeling. Are you thinking and feeling like the herd of people that are all glued to the newspaper or glued to the radio or glued to the TV? Or are you thinking independent thought? Are you taking the time and mental energy to create your own life, to create your own world, to create anything in your life that is new and is your own thoughts, your own reality, your own energy? What are you doing with it? Because wherever your thoughts go, your attention goes, that's where your energy flows. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. So if you're constantly giving your attention to horrible stories and awful news broadcasting and radio and newspapers, everything like that, and then your attention is also going to everybody in your life talking about the same thing, that is depleting your energy, and that's exactly where your energy is going. So what if you took the time to change your thought patterns and your baseline? What if you took the time to place your energy, say, on your heart? Put your attention on your heart space. We've got 8 energy centers. And when you take the time to cultivate a new baseline of energy, of thought, of feeling, emotion, and you take your attention and you place it on your heart space, and you breathe into your heart space, and you start to cultivate the emotion or the feeling that you want. Say, if you want courage, or confidence or strength, peace or happiness. All of these things can be cultivated. Take the time to put your attention on your heart space and cultivate those emotions. You can do that by thinking of a time where you actually had that emotion. If there's a time in your past, a fond memory of happiness, of peace, of clarity, confidence, strength, you name it, think about that memory. Think about it as vividly as you can and hold that in your mind. Once you have that in your mind, feel into that emotion as if it's happening right now. Feel into that memory as if it's replaying in your mind, and watch your body chemistry respond. Because our body chemistry responds to our thoughts. That's why I think it's so important to look at what your regular thoughts are, what your default thoughts are, what your default emotions are, because those are the thoughts and the feelings that are driving the chemistry in your body. And that will determine how often you get sick, how long you get sick for, how bad you get sick when you do get sick, how well your body is regenerating while you're sleeping, how well your body is regenerating while you're awake and walking around, how well your entire body functions from head to toe can be determined by what your baseline is for thinking and feeling. Because we are complex creatures, we have emotions. We get happy, sad, mad, angry, excited, all these things, and that can happen in a very short span of time, and that's okay. Heck, you can have a bunch of those all at once, and that's fine. We are complex creatures, and we're supposed to feel different emotions. But for how long can you sustain a baseline that is not a good emotion, not a good feeling, not a good thought? You can't sustain that very long. So breathe into your heart space and sustain a new baseline. Choose what feeling and thought you want to bring into now. Choose that. And take deep breaths in while keeping your focus and attention on your heart space. And see what changes. This is called heart-brain coherence. And it makes a big difference with whatever you're trying to heal, whatever you're trying to change in your life. If you just want to feel different on a daily basis, check yourself. Check what your baseline is. Thoughts, feelings, emotions. And if you don't like it, start changing it now with that step. That is one step that you can start doing right now, today, to start to change your life completely.